I know you want to add something here, but is it true to say that one thing that particularly made the Passion of the Christ unique is that it was made by the traditionalist Catholic, which is the life of Christ made from, or an aspect of the crucifixion from the life of Christ, made specifically by a traditionalist Catholic, trying to remain true to that devotional philosophy?
Well, what they said about the men who built the magnificent Gothic cathedrals where you are on the other side of this pond, is that they didn't have opinions. They had belief in God. And, that's what I think makes this now, I think, franchise, thank goodness, so magnificent, is because not only did Mel Gibson really consult many, many sources, but he has a strong belief in God. And the truth of the film, the truth of God, just like the magnificent art and music that was generated by people of faith, that we've lost. I mean, we haven't had a magnificent movie from Hollywood since Passion of the Christ, because culture has been hardened and brutalized and devoid of God and faith. And that's what I'll just never forget that scene where Jesus falls, carrying the cross, and his mother is there and she's looking him in the eyes. I mean, to this day, I can barely think of it without wanting to sob, because it was just so powerful. And, it's coming at a time when the world seems to be searching yet again for Christ, for truth, for beauty. And as jarring as Mel's movies are, because they're very realistic, they exude the beauty of the Catholic faith and the beauty of Jesus Christ and the truth that he brings to a fallen world. It's, this is what Hollywood just doesn't understand, is that you need to have the faith of Jesus Christ, the creator, to create magnificent masterpieces. And so that's why I'm really looking forward to it, not only on an artistic front, but also in really displaying for the people of the world the beauty of Christianity and Jesus at this moment in time when there was such a great, the apostles would say, how could he leave us after only 3 years of preaching? How could, why doesn't he come down off the cross? Why, he is Christ, he is God. And this was a terrible moment, but of course the resurrection brought the great faith and hope for all of us, for eternity. So, I mean, this is not only a cultural message for us, but I think it's also a religious message. I think we need to pray that all those forces that attacked the Passion of the Christ during its making, be put aside, and that that Mel's vision, really grounded in his Catholic faith, traditional Catholic faith, really does come on the screen in Technicolor, so that all of us are moved from the heart about Jesus Christ.
You came so close, Liz. You're so close to naming one of my favorite scenes in that film, which is I think is conjoined in the one that you mentioned, but it's where Christ as a kid trips over and you see the Virgin on the pathway, and you see, I don't know why I get I don't get why I get the I feel the sort of the sweat on the palm of my hands as I'm talking about it. It sort of humanizes Christ, I think. You see, he trips over on the path, and you see the Virgin Mary sort of running to his mother, running towards him to wrap him up in her arms. And then I think, isn't it mixed in with the same scene, as you say, when Christ trips on the stumbles
7 sorrows
on
of
the
his
road
mother, the 7 sorrows of his mother, the worst of which
That's
is
right.
walking along Golgotha and watching her son crucified to death. That, to me, the Mary and Jesus in that movie was just so beautifully portrayed.
The whole film film. I mean, I have no doubt that film was inspired by and protected by the Holy Spirit, more so than anything that came out of the Bergoglio papacy. Every scene, every single aspect, every single frame of that film is literally perfect and untouchable. You know, as Frank Walker said, this is going to be a catechetical moment, and I hope the hierarchs in the Catholic Church and even pastors in the Protestant church, the evangelical church that did so much to support that film 20 years ago. I hope they'll be on hand to use it to take the message, like what that guy Dallas is doing with The Chosen, to taking Jesus Christ to a new generation. Okay, just in a few short minutes, Liz, you're going to come back and tell us about how we are apparently losing some aspects of this culture war. But I do then, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about this, about the not so good news on the culture war front that we are apparently losing, in part because of the absence on the battlefield of Pope Leo.
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent article in The Remnant by Gaetano Masculo, talking about, he did some excellent research on really the present state of euthanasia, euphemism, I might add, for assisted suicide, another euphemism. But the culture of death is really taking hold in Europe. We've seen it in the Western states, here in America. But for example, in 2025, we're not even halfway through, Spain had 1,300 cases of assisted suicide being carried out. And this is the loosening of regulations. More and more people are invited into this pool of peril, I call it, where they are claiming that, you know, they're either dying or in, you know, mental health pain. The regulations continue to be opening up to more and more people availing themselves of assisted suicide. I mean, the number, you know, this is the culture of death. Let's be honest. I mean, if there is, you know, hundreds of millions of children every year being aborted, it is no surprise that we would go to the other most vulnerable population, the elderly, and so they go through Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland. They all have legalized assisted suicide, and there has been virtually no pushback at all from the church.
Okay. And you need to help me understand something here, because my small brain can't absorb it. I thought that Pope Leo, who's currently enjoying these approval ratings, I think he's the most popular political figure in the United States. Well, he's American, he's not a political figure in the United States, but everyone would have seen the poll that came out a few days ago. He's way up there, like plus 40, 45 points or something. We've all seen the photos of him in the helicopter ride to this youth conference in Italy, getting the rock star reception. So the mainstream media told us, with these million or so pilgrims or tourists, whichever word you should want to choose. I'm surprised to hear that that such a beloved figure isn't using some of his political capital to defend the non-negotiable positions of the Catholic Church. How can that be?
Well, because the new theology of the Catholic Church is the synodal, listening, accompanying, journeying Church of Mercy. And it is merciful not to allow people to suffer anymore. We just talked about, the crucifixion of Christ in, who embraced suffering and death on a cross, the worst kind of torture imaginable, so that we human beings, the children of God, could attain salvation. But mercy has become now I consider it the absolute theology now of the Catholic Church. We are now putting away, ignoring, censoring any readings any teachings of John Paul II, who actually was in Evangelium Vitae, powerfully talked about and just took on these issues, as did Benedict, about assisted suicide. They saw this happening in Europe, and they were going to stand as a wedge between the culture of death and what was happening to our weak elderly, and spoke valiantly about the importance and position of the Catholic Church, and about, redemptive suffering, which of course never gets mentioned anymore. And so certainly this Pope is not going to take on the cultural issues of the globalists. And it's all about depopulation. Jenny talked about the LGBT agenda. That's about depopulation. We talked about abortion, depopulation. This is too also about depopulation, the global agenda of 2030 of the UN. And so people, and they will use language like they use the same language of abortion to minimize it, to soften the blow. So we have to be absolutely, critical thinkers when they talk about mercy, and they've used mercy as have the states and countries in promoting this new agenda.
Where do people go to catch up with you?
On social media, Elizabeth Yore. My Substack is Your Children, as is my website.